This is the Bowls of Life podcast. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Virginia. As we've gone through life, we've learned something important.
Life is messy. It gets complicated.
But we've also learned that we can create tools to help us jump into the mess of life and make an adventure of it.
Welcome to our messy adventures of faith, family, and food. You sounded like you were almost trying to be just like the most nondescript advertising reading woman out there. Like it was like this very elegant, poised, not British, because sometimes we think of elegant and poised as British for some reason. TV has taught us that because we're American and they sound different, I guess.
Yeah.
But I bet they don't think we sound elegant and poised at all.
No.
They probably think we sound like rednecks.
Yeah.
They definitely think I sound like a redneck.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't trying to, but I did feel like I sounded like a radio voice.
You did. I actually had somebody tell me the other day that you had a very good voice for podcasting and radio. They did not mention my voice, and so I did take that personally. Not really, but kind of.
I don't think of my voice like that, but yeah. I led a group just recently through, it was our worship team. I was leading them through like a breathing, like just stop and take a breath. And I was kind of sharing something, and somebody came up afterwards and was like, I would pay money to have an app with your voice leading me through a meditation and a breathing exercise. And I was like, what? I do not have that kind of voice.
So out of curiosity, did this person happen to mention how much money they would pay? Because we can probably make that happen for the right price. I'm just saying.
No.
Oh, man. Right off the bat,
Yep.
We just heard our little bit. Yep, she's making multiple
away.
cries. So we'll be right back.
And we're back.
And we're back.
That was easy put down, thankfully.
It was.
So far.
We'll see how it goes.
We'll try not to be too loud.
What are we talking about today, Virginia?
Today, we are talking about the chapter on marriage from the book Habits of the Household.
By
Justin Whitmel Early.
Thank you for saying his name. Definitely don't have a complex about it. Yes, we are talking about marriage on this one, and so we want to go ahead from the top and acknowledge that marriage can be a difficult topic for someone, especially if you're divorced or single or widowed, and so we totally understand if you don't want to stick around for this one. But before you go, we will say that God's covenant love for you is more real than any of us can fathom, and that his love in the end heals all of our pains. And so we just want to throw that out there on the front end, recognizing that, again, marriage is a touchy subject. I mean, I grew up a kid of divorce, and so I know that quite well. Yeah. Talking about marriage and all the good stuff with it.
And Justin throws this caveat in the book. So,
yes.
If you're still thinking about getting the book, you should.
Yes, absolutely.
Even
you
so.
should. Even with this chapter. Yep. Kind of kicks off the chapter and has this quote at the top of it that just stuck with me. I think I almost remembered it before rereading this chapter. It said, it's a terrible fiction to imagine that we can be good mothers and fathers without being good husbands and wives. Ultimately, in the story of God, the strength of the household depends on the strength of marriage. How's that hit you? What sits with you on it?
Yeah, I just think that we have to make sure that our marriage is in a good place in order to take care of our kids in a good way.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, he kind of talks about the fact that we will ignore the work of the household so that we can focus on the thing that really keeps the household working, and that's the marriage, the relationship between the husband and wife, the parents.
Yeah.
Because if that relationship isn't working, none of the other ones are going to work super well either. They're going to be, even if they don't know what it is, like they're feeling the weight and the tension of the disunity there.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're washing the dishes when probably you should be having a conversation, then that's not really going to work out well for your marriage and the rest of the household, even though your dishes are clean.
Yes. Wash them together.
Yeah, have a conversation.
Yep. I think there's a lot of good that could be had over conversations while doing something else.
Yeah.
That's often where a lot of the good conversations happen, but we'll get to
yeah.
that in a second.
Oh, yeah.
Before we do, I love that he pointed out and quoted a book from like 1907. Hello, Justin. Way to be reading widely, my man. But he talked about the fact that the story of the world begins and ends with a wedding. So you think about Genesis. Well, obviously there's creation of some of the days, and you technically don't get to the wedding moment until we're seeing it in Genesis 2. It's still pretty clear that everything in creation was building up to that. Like, that's almost the apex. I'd argue that God resting is actually the apex, but that's just before you get there is this wedding that happens. I mean, literally the only thing that's not good in God's initial creation is man being alone, him not having someone who is his equal, his opposite equal, not opposite, his, give me words, Virginia, you're staring at me.
No, I don't
his,
have it.
his other matching half, his puzzle piece. That's what we'll go with. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
The piece that finished the puzzle.
I like it. Yeah.
Yes. And so it begins with a wedding, but then the story of Scripture also ends with a wedding. In Revelation, there's lots of crazy stuff going on in Revelation. That's a whole conversation.
Right.
But the very end of it is a wedding feast of Jesus as the groom and the church as the bride of Jesus being unified finally fully together for the very first time at that level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a cool yet weighty thing to think that our marriage is supposed to represent the relationship between Jesus and his church.
Oh yeah, that's a whole thing that I don't think we talk about enough.
Yeah.
And when we do talk about it, and as a pastor who speaks occasionally from the stage, I can say, like, your 30-minute window, just there's only so much you can say, and you're often trying to put Band-Aids with as much practical stuff as you can. Therefore, you don't get to necessarily dig deep into some of the theological sides of things. That there are plenty of great books and I guess study series, things like that do it, but the amount of people who actually will get into that dwindles quickly versus the amount of people who will hear a sermon, and you just don't get to dig into that topic as deeply as you would want to.
Because I've had the thought before, like, divorce is becoming such a common thing.
Oh gosh, yes. And
I think about, are we really preparing people to enter into marriage? Like, if we're going to really say that, okay, yeah, divorce needs to be like last resort, obviously, unless it's like abuse situation and all that, adultery and all that. But like, if we're really going to say that and believe that because this is what the Bible says, are we not doing a good job? Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about Christians,
right?
Okay, like the church. Like, are we not doing a good job in the church preparing people for the covenant that they are making, like what it actually means and what life, is going to throw you when you do get married?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Like, are we really, really preparing people?
No.
Because we're letting people, I say letting, but we are as pastors, we're letting people enter into marriages when they should hold off a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. No, there was. Yeah. We ultimately sit down, typically when we do premarital counseling, you and I will do it together with somebody, and we do it across 2 sessions. And while I think they're good and beneficial and people have thanked us for it and been able to have conversations on the other side of it.
It is massively under.
It's nothing. It's 2 1-hour-ish sit downs together. And ultimately, they've already made the decision. They're getting married.
Right.
I think we had one couple that, even though they were still trying to figure some things out because they're on later in life and on the other side of a lot of things, they were still very much planning to get married. The question wasn't, are we getting married? It was more just, are we ready to?
Yeah.
For them. And so our premarital counseling with them, I think that was probably the one it was the most helpful with.
Yeah.
But even then, like, I don't know that there was much of a scenario where they weren't getting married, no matter what we said.
Yeah.
There's been a
Right. And that's, I guess, when you go into marital counseling, typically the question is not, are we getting married? It's just help us prepare for marriage.
yeah, yeah, and I don't know. There's probably a conversation to be had about whether or not we as pastors are doing a good job spending enough time having that conversation and looking at people and going, hey, okay, sure. Across the next 2 months, we're going to meet every week and talk about some things. As the balancing side of putting a realistic expectation on people of that, because there's plenty of people who go, yeah, that's not going to fit my schedule, and I can find someone else who can do this, or I can get my buddy to go online and take this 30-minute certification, whatever thing, and we can do it in the backyard.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
A lot of back and
absolutely.
forth on whether or not we're preparing people for marriage and whose responsibility that is, and it's all in the gray. Isn't all the answers in the gray? It's the worst. I want black and white answers.
Right. It makes me think of this movie that was recent. Not this particularly makes me think of it, but I just thought of this movie that was recently like promoted. I don't know, in the past couple of years. I think Jennifer Lopez was in it, and it was like this. I did not watch the movie, but it was like they were getting married only to get divorced, and then I can't remember why it was, but I just remember thinking like, we have movies, which I know it's not Christian marriage on a movie like that, but like we are making movies about getting married and divorced, like The Proposal even, which is a funny movie with Sandra Bullock, but it's like
it makes light of what marriage is.
Right. Yeah, like making marriage like it's nothing, like it's literally like what. Like
it's
flavor.
To get a green card for her in the movie.
Yeah. And then make it as simple as like what flavor you want in your coffee.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, anyways, so that's our culture.
It very much is.
Yeah.
Lots of conversations to be had there.
Yeah.
We're not going to run in all those directions that we definitely could.
Speaking of the covenant that you make.
Yes. So in the book, he refers to marriage as the great theme of Scripture. I'm not sure I fully agreed with that, but I will agree that the thing behind it that he talks about throughout the chapter of covenantal love being maybe the great theme of Scripture.
Yeah.
So covenantal love, what's the difference maybe in I love pizza and covenantal love, Virginia? Go.
Oh, I love pizza would be like, yeah, I love pizza, but if you put olives on it, that changes.
Oh, gosh. If you put olives on a pizza, it does change. I have strong feelings about olives, and all of them are negative.
Yeah. But then covenantal love would be, I love that pizza no matter what you put on it. Oh, sorry. I hit the table. But yeah, it would be like, no matter what it costs me, no matter what is on top of that pizza, no matter what that pizza has been through, no matter what that pizza does to me after I eat it, I love that pizza.
Yeah, so he kind of defines it as love as a feeling, which is very conditional, and it's predicated, not a word I use, but I like that he did.
Yeah.
Predicated, he's a lawyer, on your individual freedom. Like, love based on feelings is really going to come down to your freedom and how it works for you. It's conditional.
Right.
If it doesn't work for you, you move on. But covenant love being a promise, it's really love in action because it's a commitment where our individual freedom is surrendered so that love can flourish.
Yeah.
And it's actually, ironically, paradoxically, under a love that you're giving up your freedom in that we actually find real freedom and happiness.
I like where he says that covenant love says, I love you despite what it costs me. But then love as a feeling, which you kind of just said this, I'll say it in a little bit simpler terms than using the word predicated.
Predicated.
I'll love you so long as it makes me happy. But then I'm free to leave. Yeah.
And that really is, I mean, that's
it's conditional.
Yeah.
It's not covenant love, which is what, when we enter into a Christian marriage,
what we're meant to be saying. Whether or not people fully understand it and are saying it or not, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But what we're meant to be saying is I'm here.
Till death do us part.
I'm going nowhere. You might begin to be a completely different human being, and this may be the hardest thing and will be the hardest thing I ever do. But I'm here.
Yeah.
And so, man.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So,
yeah.
covenant love.
Ultimately, in covenant love is something that you finally start to feel because you first practice loving the other person even when you don't feel it. Again, it's coming back to as love as a habit. All of this book is based around as habits. We're practicing things not because we necessarily feel them, but because we want to.
Yeah.
I mean, and we romanticize love and all the things, but realistically, like, if I hadn't have come into your life, you would have just started dating someone else eventually. And as you guys dated, you would have begun to love this person in a very similar way. And so it's not that I do to some extent believe in that we were the ones meant for one another, but that's a whole different theology thing.
Right.
But just from a habit standpoint, like, you can make yourself love someone else if you practice it enough.
Yeah, and you can fall in love with someone else.
Make my words better.
Well, and I think that that may be how some marriages fall apart.
Yes.
Because the people who are married don't practice loving each other anymore. And when that person, one of the married people, meets someone outside of their marriage at work or wherever, and they get a little too close, then they start to fall in love with another person.
Yeah. They're practicing the simple things that love is built on, the foundational things that we're going to get into in this, of just a lot of times conversation and undivided attention.
Yeah.
Like, that's probably one of the most foundational love beyond a feeling or feeling things comes from. It's just like, you've paid enough attention to me that you seem to know and understand me and care about me through your attention.
You see me.
You see me.
And you're still talking to me.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think marriage has been taken too lightly here lately.
Absolutely it has.
Obviously, that's what the enemy wants. But we're going to talk about ways to
Strengthen.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Marriage being really hard isn't a sign that your marriage is inevitably failing. As a matter of fact, it might be a sign that you guys are working on it, and bringing two sinful people together is just difficult.
Yeah.
Now it might be hard because you haven't been working on it and you've realized you're not working on it, and now you're trying to, and it's hard because of that. But ultimately, marriage is just hard. And sometimes harder than others. Loving somebody despite all of their flaws and despite all of your flaws, because don't forget you have those too, it's supposed to actually be a bit hard because it's a sanctifying process. I mean, Jesus, God, the Trinity are using marriage as a sanctifying work. I mean, you don't recognize just how selfish you are until you have to constantly think about another person as you're making your decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people, I think I've talked about this before, but like, before you're married, you know, you're only thinking about you. You're only thinking about what you want for supper. You're only thinking about if you want to watch this movie or that movie. You're only thinking about your plans for the weekend. When you enter into marriage, and then have children, of course. Oof. But when you enter into marriage, your thoughts now are tethered to another person. And they matter, you know, and their opinions and their feelings and their ideas matter. And so you have to go, okay, well, I want this for supper, but my spouse also wants this for supper. So how do I make that happen for both of us?
Yep.
Or how do I compromise? And, you know, and I know that's like a simple,
but it matters.
It's kind of a simple, you know, example there, but it matters. And you have to start thinking about another person.
Yep. And this is, if you're only ever the one compromising in the marriage, what happens? You start to build resentments and grudges and unspoken all the things. And yeah, it's why it's built on mutual self-sacrifice and not just one individual sacrificing on behalf of the other.
Right.
Those are the marriages that do end up failing, is because one person is giving constantly and the other is not. Now, I think they're always, again, more gray than just that, but that's definitely a factor in some.
When I wonder, like, we think about intentionality, because I mean, you can probably look at some people and think, you know, are they purposely not engaging in their marriage? Like, do they realize that they're not, you know, choosing to love their spouse? And I think sometimes maybe the person really does not realize it.
Yep.
But it all goes back to this whole habit thing that we're talking about. Like,
yes,
you have to be intentional.
You choose it.
You're choosing to love. You're choosing to engage in your marriage. It's not something that just happens.
No.
Good marriage and love don't just happen.
Yeah, if you're just on auto drive or autopilot or expecting it to just happen as you are in the same space, like one of my top love languages is quality time, and while you and I are often together, not all of that time is quality. Have you sat at our table and had a meal with our children? It's not what I would call quality shared time between you and I.
Right.
Now, as a family, yes, and it's good.
It's great.
We've talked about those things. But as far as you and I, the chaos that's happening, I feel very little connection to you at meal times right now, because we're being parents.
And so you think about when you add kids to the mix, or, you know, even if you don't have kids, like, when that happens and you're losing those connection points, like, how are you going to stay connected? Are you going to be intentional about it? Or are you just going to let life fly on by? And next thing you know, you haven't had, you know, a conversation in weeks. You know, so.
Not any of meaning beyond, hey, I got to go do this, or hey, can you do this?
Right.
And like, you've not had
in the night.
You've not had a meaningful connection, a conversation without distractions.
Yeah.
So one of the very first ones he talks about in this chapter is date nights. How do you feel about date nights?
I'm so glad you asked that. I sometimes really hate it when people are like, y'all need to have a date night. Not personally to us, but just like the general consensus of, make sure you have a date night. I hate it. I don't know why. I don't hate it, but
What about it rubs you?
I think because, like, it feels almost like this must, this thing you have to do in order to have a good marriage. And I'm looking at me and you and going, I really love you and I really love our marriage, but do we have consistent date nights? No, we don't. And I'm okay with that. And we're going to talk about our own personal life here, but when people say go have a date night, it feels like they're not looking at my life and going, this is what is going to work for you, because there's nuance. Is it a financial constraint? Is it because you have 3 littles? Is it because of whatever, you know? And so date night to me has to be very individual. Does it look like sitting together on the couch after the kids are in bed and having a conversation? If you want to call that date night, that's fine. But I don't care what it's called. As long as we're connecting, that's what's important to me.
Yeah.
So when we talk about it, we're going to give those nuances here tonight. But that's what I feel. Like, just to answer your question, like, that's what I feel when I hear people say have a date night. I'm like, date night?
Yeah.
Date night?
Because
like,
the term comes with an expectation of, like, go out and do all the things.
Yeah.
But I'll give Justin his credit. He actually talks about it from the other side primarily. And just kind of says, like, spend time at home, but do occasionally also try to
and I
have
agree.
an out night. And I appreciate that about the chapter, is that he is not coming at date night as this big out expectation.
But, you know, So if you're listening and that's how you feel, know that we're about to give like more nuance to the whole date night recommendation that Justin gives here. Cause he does also, like he said, he gives that nuance. He gives those different ideas around date night besides just going out to eat and doing something outside your house.
All right. So he refers to date night as a habit of rehearsing the covenant that we've made. Like we're practicing being in love, essentially. And not that feeling kind of love, but the commitment love.
Yeah.
Because, ultimately, like kids, if you got kids in a marriage, they demand constant attention at all times.
Yeah.
Have we ever made it through a conversation in the last 2 years while they're awake? No, we have not.
Not really, no.
No, not much. But one of the central things we need in our marriage is to give and get the undivided attention of your spouse. And so I just got to like insert where we are in real time. I just finished working on a sermon for Mark 12:28-34, the greatest commandment: love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That one. And the way I kind of reframed loving God with all that you are was giving God undivided attention, and reframed loving your neighbor as yourself as unconditional care. And I did all of that before reading this chapter. Like I'd already made those decisions, and he just like full on used the same verbiage. I don't know if I remembered it from reading this book 2 years ago, or if it was just good takeaway.
It was, it was funny. I thought the same thing. I was like, this is what Tyler is like preaching on this Sunday.
Nope. Well, I mean, yes, but it wasn't intentional.
Not. Oh, of course. It wasn't. Yeah.
But anyway, so giving your undivided attention to somebody, and that's difficult if you don't have some sort of time away. Technically, we started this podcast partially to force ourselves to sit down and have extended conversations. Cause
I think that was part of it. That was definitely like a benefit of it.
Yes. Yeah. And so, I mean, even now getting back to it after whatever it was, a year off or something like that. I mean, I've enjoyed that this is a form of our date night, if you will.
I enjoy it so much. And I think about date night and like what that would actually look like for us. Or even like we used to watch TV. That kind of was a thing we did a good bit.
Once upon a time. Yeah.
So and even like when we slowed down, we still would like pick a TV show after the kids went to bed. And now it's like, oh, like this is what
this is our thing.
This is our thing, and I love it because we just chat and it's fun.
Yeah, I always appreciate, and usually we're not planned. I always think of myself as a very habitual, I need all my things planned out. Justin Whitmel Early makes me look like I am just a free willy-nilly person. He plans everything down to the second. At least it appears that way in this book and his other one, The Common Rule. But anyway, I always appreciate those nights where we get done putting the kids to bed, putting the house to bed, so to speak, getting all the things taken care of, and we just kind of end up sitting on the couch and talking. Yeah. Obviously a little bit different than this, but very similar. It's just because we're having conversation together.
Oh, yeah, we sit on this couch often and have conversation post-bedtime, post-putting the house to sleep. And that's always really nice. Like, it's not like a date night, but it's time for good conversation. And I remember hearing a friend say that when she and her husband were going to have like lunch or something for the one time over the weekend, she's like, I have a list of things we have to talk about. And I was thinking, dang.
That's extra.
Well, and it was, but it was because like with the kids and like work and, just all the stuff that's going on in the week, like, there wasn't time.
Yeah, where else were they going to talk about these things that they needed to talk about?
And it was things like they needed to reconcile over like kind of things. It seemed like, and I just remember being like, wow. And now I'm like, okay, I get it. Yeah. I get it. Now I don't keep a list just because I'm not a list person, but there, it's like, I got to remember to tell him that at the end of the day. Yep. And sometimes it's as little as, I want to tell you what Luna said today. That was super cute or something, I'd want to remember to tell him that at the end of the day. Yeah,
no, that's good. So one of the things he talks about is the fact that every so often they'll kind of pre-plan typically to have what he calls a parenting check-in, where they use a lot of their date night to just have the conversation around things of how's parenting going. Sometimes that's more, okay, how's Luna doing with language arts? And the answer is she wants to do other things that aren't language arts.
Yes.
But, if I'm not here for homeschool and I only get the 10-second snippet that you could manage out while Ezra screamed, "I not baby, I Ezra," and Luna screamed, "Give me my toy back," and Stella screamed, no words, but she screamed, "Please pick me up," all at the same time.
Yeah.
And if we're trying to actually discuss, like, what's going on with homeschooling, how can I be helpful to you when I'm not here? Like, what are things you need from me? Like, unless we make a spot to stop elsewhere outside of just passing each other in the day, this is never going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Yeah.
And so, having those kind of check-ins where they kind of think about it. He literally says it's fairly unstructured. They do have some general questions. I think they kind of come around, but it's mostly just like, hey, what's going on with the kids? What's going on with us as parents?
Yeah, especially if you had like a discipline type conversation with the child, or a learning, experience with a child, or
figured out something that's working for this thing over here that, the other spouse is never around for. So technically they don't know and have to fully know, but, they should know.
Yeah.
Like what's working for potty training right now?
Or if your child stuck a button up their nose and
not that that's happened around
your
here.
immediate action got it out. So.
Yeah, you did. Good job. It was a day, man. He did many things that day.
He did many things that day.
He did many things.
But just to talk about that so that like, oh, yeah, we had an incident today.
Yeah, so being able to have check-ins. He said they literally bring a notepad. Less for like a pre-planned list, though they probably have some of that of things they want to talk about, but it's more to be able to write down and remember like next steps they need to take.
Yeah.
Like one of them's struggling in math and maybe we need to get them a tutor because we're not able to teach them that. And so that's the next step we need to take. Yeah. Or it's glancing back over the last time they got together and said, oh, here's our list of next steps and we haven't done this one or this one. So are those still relevant? Do we still need to do that? Or
how's this been going?
Yeah, how's it going? Just kind of checking in on the process. And they also kind of say we try to find prayer points out of this. Like that's one of the things is, hey, how can we very specifically be praying for Stella right now?
Yeah.
Well, right now we're praying that bedtime does not become what it was for Ezra.
Yeah.
Or, or a million other things.
Through the night sleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So check in for parenting. But on the other hand, we didn't really talk much about like
the date night. Yeah,
part,
it just came up in the combo. But yeah, ultimately, whatever you do, especially if it's more of the go out kind of things or those kind of things where you're like full on planning something, just recognize it will probably go wrong as often as it goes right. Yeah. Whether that's something happened with the kids and you have to call it off or call it off mid of the thing, like so-and-so threw up and now we got to stop. We were going to go to a movie, but we're definitely not doing that now.
Yeah. Or I love the example he gave. It was like you bought something on the menu that was way out of the budget and you got, the other one got mad about it, and I'm like, I can relate.
Dwelling on that for the rest of the evening.
Right, or, you're fighting or, whatever. Yeah. So it can go wrong, but
it wasn't nearly as romantic as it was for Matthew McConaughey in every Matthew McConaughey movie ever. No, of course it wasn't. It was a movie.
Yeah, and I love the idea of, like, date night in, too, where it's like, okay, we're not going out to the movies, but we like pop the popcorn and we set up the TV so that we can watch a movie and all that kind of stuff. Like you can make it special. Yeah. At home too.
I appreciated that he did say while he spent more time talking about at home things, partially I think because it's his life, but also I think he's combating that idea that rubs you the wrong way and probably plenty of other people. He did kind of say something along the lines of, while keep it free and easy is majority of the time, you spend money on things that are valuable to you.
Right.
You spend money wisely, yes, and that makes a difference depending on what your budget is. But from time to time, yeah, spend some money to go out and get a babysitter and do the things because...
Like going to kayak.
Yeah.
Like we did that recently.
Absolutely.
Like, I know that was technically with friends, but still, like...
I mean, it was time together.
We've done it. We've done it just me and you before.
Yep.
We've done, I'm trying to think of anything else we've done kind of recently. Like see a movie. We haven't done that recently, but that's one that we've done before.
Yeah, if we did a quick weekend getaway of, the Harry Potter experience last year.
Yeah, that's right.
Random things like that.
Yeah.
Maybe concerts or your thing, whatever. But
yeah,
as much as we'd recommend, most of the time it's probably a conversation just after the house has gone to sleep, hanging out.
Yeah.
Maybe have some ice cream or Oreos or whatever your thing is.
Right.
To make it sort of special.
Yeah.
There are still benefits in spending the go out kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's special. And I mean, if you're one of those people that gets to do it weekly,
that's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's just not our life.
That's just not our life. Yeah.
Yeah. He talks about babysitters and the fact that getting a babysitter, one, if you've got family or really close friends nearby, it gives your kids opportunity to continue building relationship with them, and just kind of recognizing that other adults can be responsible for them and protect them. And
when it shows them that, as well as it shows them that mommy and daddy value time together.
Yes. And so that's definitely a big one as well. He talks about in one part of this chapter that showing affection it's a plus. Like you definitely should be showing affection in your relationships because what you're showing ultimately plays into what your kids expect marriage to look like.
Right.
And if you're not showing affection in your marriage, then there's a chance they don't expect that and won't show it in their marriage and potentially causes problems down the road.
Yeah, like it's a modeling for your kids, for sure.
Just because they don't understand everything you're doing, and obviously there's right levels and showing affection in front of your kids, doesn't mean they don't notice it. Not just because they don't understand it doesn't mean they don't notice it, and then years possibly down the road start to interpret and understand what was going on. So practice saying I love you in front of your kids, and not just like they're walking out the door, okay, see you later, I love you, but like just randomly it's like, hey, I love you. Hey, love being married to you.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And practice saying I'm sorry, especially if something happened in front of them. You want to say I'm sorry to the other, like a tension between spouses. You want to say I'm sorry in front of them so that they realize you guys worked that out.
Yeah,
like
you
you're
reconciled.
okay. You reconciled.
Yeah, and in that it's important to do that.
Yes, very much so. Even if that's down the road, like later in the day or something next week, whatever, it's still like, let them know that's been worked out. Don't leave them wondering if mom and dad are still upset about whatever the thing was.
Yeah, I feel like, not that we like get mad at each other very often like that, but there's probably been a moment or two that one of us like kind of snapped, but we didn't come back and say I'm sorry in front of the kids. We still said I'm sorry to each other,
right?
Or reconciled, but we didn't say it in front of the kids. So that's a good reminder to do that.
Yeah, especially as they're getting older, that's probably going to become more and more of an important thing because they'll pick up on it much easier.
Yeah.
Right now, it would have to be a blatantly obvious thing. In the future, they'll pick up on the subtle things.
Right, exactly. I think about Luna, who, like, for a minute there was like, I want to kiss on the lips. I want to kiss on the lips. She was, like, obsessed with, like, wanting to kiss on the lips.
Yes.
And we were like, okay, what is this? And then I was like, Tyler, it's because she sees you and I kiss on the lips, and, like, she sees that that's special.
Yeah.
And so she's just longing for that affection. So just kind of how we, model it for them.
And didn't even really mean to do that one, but it happened, and I'm okay with it. Yeah.
Yeah. He kind of says in the book, no matter what, what your date night ends up being, you know, it's always about connection. It's always about undivided attention, for each other. And he says it's always about sex too. He said make time for that. So that emotional intimacy of connection that we have.
That we build because we're spending undivided time together.
Yes, will lead to that physical intimacy as well. They feed off of each other, I guess.
Yeah, and it's 10 times more true for women that emotional intimacy is needed on the front end. But it's still true for dudes too. Yeah. I mean, if you don't feel loved, it's like, I'm not sure I'm really into this. Like you said a thing earlier to hurt my feelings, and I'm not really feeling this right now. That's totally a thing. And so if we're never creating space, whether it's a planned every Wednesday we have date night, or hey, at least once a week we're gonna hang out together after the kids are in bed, whatever, however you do that, if we're never making space for undivided attention, connection, we're never going to build emotional intimacy with one another, and we're never going to really want to build that physical intimacy, or at least be, maybe it's not a desire conversation, but a willingness conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And shared activity is also a huge part of that. It's just like, as you're doing things together, if you're having fun doing them,
right.
If you're having a miserable time, obviously not. Yeah. But if you're both having fun in a shared activity, especially for dudes, that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
That's going to build that desire for one another and that feeling of closeness that ultimately accumulates in sex.
Yeah. One of the things that we,
Sorry, keep going.
One of the things that we talk about with our people that we do like marriage counseling with is how women long to be cherished.
Yes.
And men long to, to have shared activity.
Shared activity, yeah.
So, and that's kind of a gender.
True across the board.
Yeah, it's kind of a gender thing. But yeah, so it's like women want to be cherished and loved and sought after, and men want to be joined in an activity together. And, I don't know, you can kind of speak to this from the male part, but like, is that any activity, or is it just activities you like to do? What was it? I can't remember.
Shared activity is kind of the general one, but I mean, things that...
So even if it's like washing dishes.
No. Maybe it probably is.
It would help.
Most primarily things that you like, that I enjoy doing, and that I can tell you enjoy doing with me,
right.
Or that I enjoyed having you there for. Now, if I'm some guy who's really into golf and you were slowing me down in my ability to make it through the course, maybe that's not actually a shared activity, and that's a whole tension thing and whatever's, but that's not our case.
Yeah.
I don't golf. I would be I've golfed once.
And I would not go
at
golfing.
You would not. You don't even like to mini golf, which is disappointing because that one's actually really fun.
Nope.
Golf is dumb. It's silly and fun.
Yeah. Anyway, shared activity.
Yeah.
Emotional intimacy.
Yes. As we build that, we build into being able to connect. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other check-in that he kind of talks about, he called it dreaming together.
I love that.
Yes.
I like to dream.
Tell me about it.
Well, I mean, I just like to talk about what we could be doing, or when I say could be doing, like what we could do with our life differently. Like we could do it this way, or we could do it that way, or we could go here, or we could go there.
You could get with this, or you could get with that. You should get with this, though, because this is where it's at.
Oh, my gosh. You're always a song lyric waiting to burst open.
It's mostly the Kia commercial with the gerbils that were driving the Kias in the late 2010s. Yeah. Anyway.
Wow. Anyways, that was a flashback. Was it talking about dreaming together? I don't know. I just kind of like to think about it. Like, I mean, that's how we got to homeschool. I feel like it was just like, what do you think it would be like if we homeschooled?
Yep.
And so that to me was like a dream. And then I have that little entrepreneurial part of me too that somehow got unlocked over the past few years. And now I'm like, I'm always like dreaming about all kinds of stuff like that. So anyways, I love those conversations. Where our family is going to be in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we got the opportunity through my my side gig with the Church Planning Network to take a weekend getaway at the beginning of the year, and that's a big part of what we used it for, was just kind of dream through. Well, one, we reflected on last year, but then dreamed going forward into this year.
I need to get that back out because I don't remember anything.
Look, I looked at mine 2-3 months ago.
I was too far pregnant.
You were very pregnant. I mean, we had a kid a month and a half later.
Yeah.
Give or take. You were very pregnant.
Yeah.
Fun times.
Yeah.
But yeah, just dreaming together. Ultimately, the goal here is to try and learn what's going on in your spouse, because you know what? People continually change. The spouse you have 10 years later is technically not the spouse you married initially. Like, plenty of things will have changed in their desires and their hopes for the future. And if you don't try to learn and understand what may be going on underneath the surface, you're liable to miss it. And if we miss the dreams of our spouse, or even just misunderstand them because we didn't take enough time to like dig into, like, what do you mean you want to homeschool? Like, are you just desiring to do that for the short term? Is like, you want to do this with all 3 kids? You hoping to do this forever? Or you just want to commit to this year? Like, what do you mean? And just sitting back and then listening to what the other person says.
I think it's really important not to be a dream squasher, at least to
and
me.
I can be bad about that.
No, and I don't think you are.
Oh.
Now, you do kind of sometimes bring like logistical, okay.
I bring reality to some of your dreams. Yeah.
Your logistic side or reality side.
And I can do it too quickly and too harshly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's my problem.
But so I'm saying this is as a general, like, for those listening, like, if your partner is talking about a dream, don't squash it. Like, just let them talk about it and ask them questions. Like you just said, like, ask them questions and let them, maybe they have to come to the conclusion that it's not real.
And so,
reality.
Like, how would we deal with this part of it? Very leading questions to try and get you to. But, like, how would you work if you homeschooled? And sitting back and letting them answer the question instead of you looking at them and going, you wouldn't be able to work and you wouldn't be able to make enough money. And then we're just doomed.
Yeah.
Because that's not how that's played out anyway.
You could have, and if you'd have done that,
you'd have said,
okay.
And
Luna
would be at Pearl Public School, which would be fun. But yeah.
I guess people know where we live.
Yeah. It's not a question.
Okay. Anyways. She's not there anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Sorry, that felt personal for you to share that. To say that.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, so don't be a dream squasher. Anyways, next topic.
Alone time. We've kind of jumped around here, but we're on alone time.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, short little part of it, but I think a lot of wisdom to it. We talked about the fact that parenting is hard, and that's why one of the greatest gifts we can give one another is the gift of time alone as a break from parenting, meaning I'll take the kids, you go do whatever your thing is that you would do, whether that's going for a walk because you just need a minute, or going to hang out with friends, or going to the gym, or to pick wildflowers. That sounds like something you would do. I was trying to think of a hobby you would leave to go and do.
Hang out with friends is the main one.
Yes.
That's something I appreciate very much.
Yeah.
When you handle the kids to let me go do that. That is 100%. I'm so thankful.
And it's, I mean, realistically, as Stella's less dependent and there's plenty of milk frozen in the freezer, that's a little easier, and she's not having to feed constantly. But in the very early ones, that makes me nervous. But at this point, it's fine.
It's going better. Yeah. It's going easier.
Especially if we can put it in the right time window.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I need a time frame. Like, it's just like this amount of time, because she starts crying and you've got her. You can do things. She starts crying and I've got her. There are limitations to what I can accomplish with her.
Yeah, absolutely. And also don't want you wasting milk. So
yeah, that too.
From the freezer.
But anyway.
But yeah, but like Justin and his wife, like, was like every Tuesday night that
she goes to do something, and he's got a night that he goes and does something.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's changed as their kids age and are in different activities.
And it's probably not literally every week, but I mean most weeks. It seems to be, especially for her, because she does homeschool and thus.
I don't know if she does.
Yes, she homeschools.
Okay,
yeah,
I didn't.
They say that at some point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but she's with the kid. I thought she was just home with the kids until they were school age. But regardless, yeah. So that's like her time to kind of
not be in the house with those children.
We're still figuring that one out. So, yeah.
Working on it.
Thanks, Justin.
But yeah, as husband and wife, one of the things we commit to is helping each other become holy and not just happy.
Oh yeah, I like that he says that, because it's not just about me time.
Yes.
And this is something that being a stay-at-home mom now, like full-time, I even had a friend ask me recently, are you getting enough time like for yourself? And I was like, well, not quite yet. We hadn't quite figured that piece out yet, but I'm not like just over here crying about, I don't have me time. Like, I'm not like over here needing like to be alone, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like sometimes that gets to be like I don't want to say an idol, but it almost becomes like this, if I don't get my me time, like I'm not, like I think of Medea, me time. I didn't get no me time. I can't remember exactly what she says or he says.
Tyler Perry. Yeah.
Yeah, Tyler Perry. Anyways, if you know, you know the reference.
I didn't watch any of this.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So anyways, but that kind of becomes an idol, I think, for some people to have this me time. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a social media trend. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm referring to. But anyways, what I was saying was become holy. Like, what's also important is your spiritual time.
Yes.
Maybe alongside or even more importantly than your me time, I guess.
Yeah. Being able to create space for you to have a moment to pray and read the Bible and things of that nature in ways that, while you're working on figuring out how that works at homeschool and doing that with them, like, there's only so much that you're really getting to actually dig in yourself in those moments.
It's been very, very lacking.
Yes.
The past few weeks.
Understandable.
Because, of those things. Just, I'm doing Bible with them. And sometimes in seasons, that's what you do. And that's enough. God still meets you there.
Absolutely does.
But I think that I do long for that me time, that time with the Lord by myself a little bit more. Yeah, for sure.
Ultimately, marriage is more than just two people making each other happy, because that's really not the purpose of marriage. Marriage is meant to be this sanctifying work where we become more holy, we become more like Jesus. Like, a major part of its purpose is that. Another part of it is just it representing the closeness and unity that is the Trinity, and also the way we are married into God. There's lots of things it's meant to represent that my brain's not fully ready to talk about at 11 p.m.
All right, yeah. Well, I think about like how sweet it is that God allows us to have marriage. Not saying it's the ultimate if you're not married, sort of thing. You can be single your whole life. That's great. That's holy too. And a high calling too. So, but how sweet it is that we get to have each other while we're on earth, and until heaven comes, we'll be I don't even know how to think about it, but just like I sometimes think, oh, I'm not going to be married to Tyler in heaven. Like, oh, I'm going to miss him, or like, what is that going to be like, or will we be married in heaven? Yeah, but it says no, Jesus says no. And so, but God's going to be so awesome that's like, this is like a tiny like glimpse of what.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like this marriage,
absolutely.
Which is great, and I love it, and I'm going to miss it. But like, I'm not going to miss it because I'm going to have God.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I can't think of the name of Matt Chandler's book on dating and marriage right now.
Mingling. Mingling of souls or
souls
something like
mingle. Yeah, something of souls and mingling, mingled souls. Anyway, but he talks about it towards maybe the back half of the book, where I think his first place I've ever heard anyone actually specifically address is sex a thing in heaven, and he's like, no, it's not, because sex is literally, it's meant to represent and give just a taste of what it's like to be that united with another in the way that we will be so deeply united with God, not through sex.
Right.
No, clearly.
No, yeah.
Not saying that, but just like the level of being
intimacy.
Being that united and connected together so that you feel like one being.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what God is three persons in one being that are so united together that it's not just that they're enmeshed together, it's that they are one together. That's kind of what sex is meant to do, and that's why it won't be there in heaven, is because we won't need that glimpse of it, that shadow of it to use.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
some of that kind of language.
Yeah.
Practicing the covenantal love is just a way to say we're trying to love each other the way Jesus loves us. Like that's ultimately what we're doing. We're trying to love one another in a deep sacrificial way. Like marriage following Jesus is kind of a gamble in some ways, because it's asking everything of you.
Yeah.
And you have to lay down yourself.
Well, like we said earlier, you marry one person, but 30 years later, you've technically been married to like 10 different people because of the changes,
all the things that change,
that happen, and you're somewhat gambling that, but you're choosing, I'm gonna love, and we're definitely not perfect by any means on that.
No.
I'm saying in general. I'm not talking about me and you.
Oh, well.
We're not either. We're not either. But what I'm saying is, like, because we're human, because we're not Jesus, we're going to fail at, just like Abraham, he could not hold up the covenant between him and God, like so much so that God was like, just you stay
asleep. A nap while I do this.
I'll do the covenant. And all that. So, yeah.
Marriage is radical and difficult because Christianity is radical and it's also difficult, and that's also a beautiful thing that we get to display to our children, is that in our marriage we're choosing the hard, not instant gratification thing of staying in this relationship when it gets hard, when it gets difficult. I mean, the easy thing is to just jump around to different relationships so that you get the honeymoon effect your whole life, because it's always a new relationship and new experiences and all the new things. I was like, no, but I want the deep things. I want the things that aren't just sugar on the bottom shelf. Yeah. And we get to show that to our kids.
Yeah. God
like
is
that.
a God who never gives up on love. And so, when we enter into covenant love through marriage, neither will we.
That's right.
Or should we?
Nor should we. All right.
Yeah.
Remind us of grace.
Yeah. Our reminder, God's love inspires our action, but our action does not inspire God's love. Our family habits will not change God's love for us, but God's love for us should change our family's habits.
AKA, we act and do these things because of God's love, and we're not expecting what we do to change the way He loves us. He just loves us. But we do this because we have experienced His love, and it is changing us.
Yeah.
It's good. Since we're married, what kind of married recipes you got for me?
I could have done Marry Me Chicken.
Marry Me Chicken. I don't even know what that is. Have we eaten that?
I feel like I gotta Google that real quick to find it. I'm not gonna do that one, but Marry Me Chicken is a good recipe. Look it up.
Okay, I don't know what that one is.
I'm not as familiar with it, so I'm not even gonna try it. But it includes sun-dried tomatoes, so it's yum.
I do like a good sun-dried tomato.
Cream.
Yeah.
the taco bake recipe. So this recipe, we hadn't done this in a minute, but I do love this one, and this is easy, and this is why I share this recipe, because of its ease. But you get some red or colorful bell peppers, red, yellow, orange. Get you some ground meat and the diced tomatoes with green chilies, otherwise known as red tail, obviously store brand. A can of black beans, and get your taco seasoning, as well as some cheese. Okay, so some shredded cheese. You're going to chop the bell peppers into bite-sized pieces. You can also use tortilla chips here. So either chop bell peppers or tortilla chips. You put them on the bottom of your pan, like your casserole dish or your pan. It's almost like it could be nachos. And then you put make sure you brown the ground beef. You put that on one of our littles just woke up, and I'm trying to tell you this recipe, and it's basically like nachos, like I said. So you put the browned ground meat on top of that. Of course, you got to brown it first. Add the tomatoes, the black beans, the taco seasoning, mix it all together. And you put this all on top of the chips and or the bell peppers, and you bake it in the oven at 350 for like 20 minutes. And put your cheese on top. So I feel like I did a really bad job of explaining that, but you just layer it and bake it in the oven with some cheese on top, and it is super yummy. So thank you guys for listening. You can help us out by going to our website, bowlsoflife.com, and check out the resources that we have designed to help you make an adventure out of faith, family, and food. Don't forget to like, rate, and review this podcast so that other people will find us. You can subscribe to the podcast and as well as share it. So share it on social media, share it when you're talking to other people. All of those things just help other people find our podcast. And while you go to bowlsoflife.com, you can also consider becoming a supporter of Bowls of Life by giving us a one-time gift or becoming a monthly supporter. That just helps us continue doing this at a level that is, really, really worth it and really good quality. We just want to thank you for joining us on this journey of messy adventures in faith, family, and food. See you later.